Hello and welcome back once again to the HR Social Hour Half Hour podcast. This is episode 44. John and Wendy talk to Michael VanDerVort. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Wendy. How's it going, John?
I'm well. I feel like
Good.
I haven't talked to you in a long time. Everything going well on your end?
Yeah, it's, pull back the curtain a little bit. We're heading towards Thanksgiving time, and it's going to be here before you know it.
It's pretty amazing. I had a conversation with previous guest Ben Eubanks last week about kind of the end of the year and things slowing down, and I feel like we're not. We're just going to keep plugging away.
Keep going fast and furious.
Yeah. We've talked about a lot of different things before we introduce our guests, and I wanted to talk briefly about chats and not ours for once. Wanted to give a shout out to our new friends over at Recruitee. They do a chat called TA Innovators, hashtag TA Innovators, and that's every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, a.m., connecting with talent acquisition and recruiting folks. And they've been very complimentary of the social hour, and just wanted to give them a shout out, and hopefully people can check out that chat. It's tough for me to make every week because Tuesday at 11, kind of like 3 o'clock every Wednesday is tough sometimes for next chat. Hopefully it can pop in there sooner than later, but wanted to mention them by name, and you keep the chat list up to date. Hopefully we can get them out there and spreading the word.
Yeah, I do. You know what? I need to take a look at the list and get it updated. So, help me out, you guys. If you know of chats that have changed or new chats that we need to be aware of, let us know, and we'll get that list updated and shared out again.
Well, enough about chats, because I want to get to chatting with our guests.
Chat for real.
I have to say, I was thinking about it, and I believe that this guest, he's the only person that we've talked to where we have individually been on his podcast. We've talked to some other folks, as a pair, but I think he is the only person that has interviewed us. So it's kind of fun to flip the script on him. But Wendy, I'll let you make the introduction and we'll get started.
Yeah, I was so excited to welcome Mike to the show tonight. He is an HR practitioner with over 25 years of experience. He specializes in creating thriving workplaces driven by positive associate relations. He's the executive director of Q Inc., a nonprofit member-run organization dedicated to assisting companies in the creation and maintenance of positive work environments. He is an accomplished social media user, and he was responsible for implementing the initial social media efforts at one of the largest grocery retailers in North America. He was recently chosen for the 6th time to serve as part of the blogging and social media team for the SHRM National Conference and Exposition. He frequently speaks and writes about a wide variety of human resources topics, including labor relations and employee relations, positive workplace leadership, and social media. So, Mike, welcome to the show tonight. And our first question is, what's in your glass?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I actually went and so it's a bottle, not a glass, technically. I have
Nice.
I work with an event planner whose name is Laura, and she lives in Phoenix, and she gifted me with every quarter I get a 12-pack of craft brewed beer. And tonight's choice, and it's not that great, but it is called Lazy Magnolia Sweet Potato Stout. It's brewed with sweet potatoes and lactose by Mississippi's oldest brewery. So I'm going to tell Laura, if you have a choice, don't send me any more of this stuff. But interesting, but that's what was in the fridge and cold. So that's what's in my bottle this evening. Anyway.
Wow. A sweet potato beer. You've stumped me
Sorry,
tonight, Mike. Congratulations.
But it's
I guess
after this.
Well, having said all that, we did have a chance to visit, several times over the last few months, and got a chance to catch up quite a bit in Chicago. I don't really know a lot of your backstory. How exactly did you first get into human resources?
It's a long story, and I won't bore you with all the details. I lived in Michigan, and I grew up in the Detroit area. And my dad was a manager for a General Electric division that was based in Detroit, back in the 60s and 70s. And he used to do a lot of labor and employee relations stuff. And I went to the University of Michigan, which is maybe going to get into the college football playoffs this year. We'll see. They're at least have a shot. I was going to do law school. And I took a detour. I graduated out of Michigan with a poli-sci degree. I got involved in a relationship. I adopted a child. I decided to change gears, and I went to work at the post office. And so I was a letter carrier for the U.S. Postal Service from 1979 to 1986. And while I was there, I actually became involved in the union movement and was elected as a union official. And that got me tremendously interested in employee and labor relations. And so when I decided to go back to school, I dropped law school as my plan, and I went to Michigan State University, which at that time had one of the leading schools for labor and industrial relations. And I went into HR. I left the post office and went to work in private industry. And I've been doing labor and employee relations of some sort as an HR generalist or a specialist for, it says 25 years in my bio, but that's just because I never want to hear 30. It's actually something like 32 years at this point. So I'm an age denier, I guess. So yeah, it was a really, growing up in Michigan, there was a lot of stuff different than today, but back in the 60s and 70s, the automobile industry and the UAW and just all kinds of stuff going on. And it was fascinating to me. And so it became an interest and then a career that I've practiced ever since.
Wow. You get a lot of labor relations experience in Michigan, for sure. It's definitely a hotbed of
yes, it was more so back then than it is now, but there's still plenty of drama going on up there these days. So
I have to ask, and we talked a little bit about it this summer. I did a hitch in labor in my previous employer, and I really, really enjoyed that world a lot. You were with the union from the Postal Service side. So when you went back and after you got your degree, you've been a corporate side person
management side.
That's
management side pays a lot better, especially when you're like an official elected at a local and you're a volunteer, right? Basically,
Right.
Yeah. Sure. But I really. It wasn't about money. I mean, clearly I wanted to be in the career, but I had always, with the law background and all of that, I had always envisioned myself in management. But when you're in a union environment, and especially in one that's also quasi-federal, the post office has a really weird status. It's not actually a government department, but it is and it isn't. It's the only way that collective bargaining, such as it is in the federal world, it's really the only way you can impact the terms and conditions of your employment. And as somebody who is interested in trying to make money and advance myself, becoming involved in the union and trying to exercise some leadership and control over my own destiny, as little as it might be realistically, it was the only way I could do that. And then there were some, there were a lot of cool problem solving issues and, conflict resolution stuff. And so when I went to graduate school and learned how to do it as a manager, I think that the advantage that having that experience on the union side gave me, at least early in my career, was a perspective of how employees feel in the workplace, hourly employees who do the work. Not all managers live in that world. And so I've always felt like I had a little bit of a special insight there. And John, over 30 plus years, I've actually become much more passionate about the belief that a good employer doesn't require a union. I'm not against unions. Obviously, I was a member and an officer, but I think a good company that strives to work with its employees, that direct relationship is the best you can enjoy if it's healthy and, engaged. And that's kind of the work that I've done for the last 15 years or so.
So with Q, your focus is on that employee labor relations side of our business. So what do you see as the biggest challenge employers are facing today when it comes to maintaining positive employee relations?
I think that kind of the ongoing, and this is maybe more eternal than today's issue. We're in one of these, and we were here a decade ago, right before the housing market melted down. We have an unprecedented job market, lowest unemployment. Whether you believe President Trump is responsible or not, clearly there are more jobs than there are people. And one of the big things that employers face is not only hiring, but retaining talent. And those employers that strive, as I said, strive to build positive employee workplaces, communicate with their people, keep them engaged. And that's not heaping money necessarily, nor, providing pet insurance as a benefit or a pool table in your lounge. I mean, it's how your managers and your employees really get along, and that, people feel treated fairly and recognized and rewarded in the workplace. I think those are this isn't rocket science, but it's stuff that companies don't always do well. And at Q, what we try to do is help employers foster those practices by sharing information with each other. We create networking and educational opportunities. And we just had a conference this past fall in Indianapolis, and like one of the companies that we talked to that presented was Best Buy. We were in Minneapolis, and Target and Best Buy are both companies that are headquartered there. We had a panel from Best Buy, and one of the gentlemen, his name is Charlie Montreal, and he said he's had 100 phone calls this year about family leave, and I'm not talking about Family Medical Leave Act, but providing leave for people to go take care of sick relatives, and that kind of paid leave, which is a government issue, something that we don't make mandatory. And Best Buy is kind of a leader on that. And they've shown tremendous benefits already just from the fact that their employees are so appreciative of the opportunity to continue to get paid while they're dealing with a major family issue. And year before that, we had Walmart, which is not always recognized as one of the top employers in the U.S. It's one of the largest, but they don't always have the greatest reputation. And they shared a workshop with us on how they treated their employees during one of the hurricanes in Texas. And they did some remarkable stuff, as simple as providing showers and hot meals, and not paychecks, but cards, debit cards where people could go get their money. And they had 8 offices in and around Houston where people could go and meet with somebody from the HR department. So, there's, sometimes it's just basic human care. And I think that's something that employers, remain challenged with. How do they do it all the time?
If you look into the crystal ball, you've been doing this a long time. You've been on the union side, you've been on the company side for a long time, and now you're working with Q, with these different employers, and hearing what's going on currently. But what do you see on the horizon? I see a lot of the content that you share, especially when it comes to some of the union activity and what's going on. But what do you see, and what are you hearing? Where do you think employee relations are going to go in the next many years?
I think in the United States in particular, right? Canada's a little different, and Europe's a little different, and other parts of the world. Unions are not standard labor unions are not as relevant in today's business world in North America as they were, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or certainly 40 or 50 years ago. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some are, they haven't done a great job. Some are that companies are doing a better job. And probably a lot of it is that what unions were formed or created around in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was the lack of government regulation on safety and the way people are treated. And, the government has sort of regulated the workplace much better, which unions led a lot of. But despite that, there are still many workplace issues. And so over the last, but they're different now in that they're not necessarily wages and terms and conditions of employment as described in a collective bargaining agreement, right? But we have the gig economy, and we have, who's the actual employer, Uber or someone else? Is the employee an employee, or are they an independent contractor? How do they get benefits, if they get benefits at all? The fight for 15 has been around for a few years and has had some success. Over the last year, we've had a massive spill. The Me Too movement has become a massive movement in the workplace. And just last week, in a rolling strike at Google, which is viewed as one of the coolest companies and all that kind of stuff, but yet their employees were taking time to walk off the job in a rolling strike around the world over the way Google had managed, 48 executives who had engaged in sexual harassment in the workplace. And so there are a lot of other in Silicon Valley and other places, there are a lot of other types of activist issues which revolve more around corporate projects. For example, I think Amazon offers a facial recognition product that their employees have advocated that they not sell, and Microsoft and Dell, a number of other companies have experienced similar movements. So we have these, it's not a labor movement or, thousands of people flocking together to exercise their collective power to make more money, but it's almost like an issue-driven collective, and they ebb and flow, and it's really difficult for employers to kind of know how to deal with it because it brings into play the public opinion. Social media has made it immensely complicated on how to respond to these things, and if you do it right, you can become a cool brand, and if you do it wrong, you can get excoriated in the press or the press of the public opinion very quickly. Nike and some others experience that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of what's going on right now. And then of course there's more technical stuff with the National Labor Relations Board. I mean, under the Obama administration, they made many changes trying to empower employees around collected protective concerted activity, freedom of speech, and now the Trump board is bringing some of that back. That's the normal ebb and flow, but they still have really complicated decisions to make around joint employer and some other issues like that are unsettled in college organizing. I mean, there's more going on than people see because most of us don't deal with unions anymore. There's a lot out there, but it's very sector specific. Sorry if I rambled around there. It's a lot of stuff for one question.
Not at all. No, it fascinates me to no end. And I heard you talking last week about In-N-Out.
Yeah, In-N-Out and
exactly. And that they are really well respected for how they treat their employees and benefits and everything else. And then they're even talking about organizing. Whoa, okay, wait. So what are they missing? There's a regional chain. I've never been up there, but I don't know if it's Portland or Seattle. I think it's Seattle, called Burgerville. And they've actually had two of the first ever fast food unions, and it was the Burgerville Workers Union and a union called the International Workers of the World, I think, that organized them. I don't know if they have a contract, but I mean, it's in the chain. When you look at like their website, if you go look on their career page, I mean, they pay like $12 an hour. They offer, paid family. I mean, it's not just a fast food restaurant with minimum wage and no benefits. They're actually a pretty good employer by the standards of that industry, and yet they still experienced organizing. And I don't know what drove it, but I suspect it probably had something to do with management or lack of respect or something along those lines where people just were not happy about things other than the pay and benefits.
You have recently announced the return of Drive-Thru HR, which John and I were both guests on that earlier this year. So we're kind of excited to see this. So tell us a little bit about how you first got involved with podcasting and what the future holds for Drive-Thru.
Sure. So I'm not sure when. So we did Robin Schooling, who many people know. Robin's been in the social media world for a long time. Just joined Strio Consultants as their director of HR after working in a casino, and I decided to play with Drive-Thru. I got involved in Drive-Thru. Brian Wempen, who no longer really works in HR, but is still well known to many of us, created Drive-Thru HR back in 2008 or 9, ran it for a while himself, brought William Tincup in. William was a host for, 4 or 5 years. Over time, Brian dropped out. William and Nisha Raghavan and Brian, I think, did it for a while. Brian left. William and Nisha had it. Eventually, Crystal Miller and I stepped in kind of on a volunteer basis about 4 years ago. And started we were trying to keep Drive-Thru alive. I think the thing that with us, and I know you guys had a couple other questions. I think Drive-Thru and HR Happy Hour were like the first two well-known HR podcasts. There are probably others out there, and I don't want to discredit anybody, but those were the two that I followed a lot. And they were events. You could call in during the day and hang out with your friends. And every Thursday night, there was kind of a party on Twitter around the HR Happy Hour when Steve Bose and Shauna Griffin were doing it, and then later on Trish McFarlane. I joined because podcasting got easier than blogging. I got tired of writing. Didn't have as much to say. I wrote every day for a couple of years, and I wrote The blog was like 7 years old. And eventually I just found that talking was a better format for me. And it also gave me a chance to talk to people in different spaces in the HR world that did stuff that I don't touch on a daily basis. So I got value by learning, and I was fascinated with the medium. Robin and I want to give it one more run to see if we can make it work, because we still love the live format, and we think the show is great. We have something like 1,500 pieces of content out there, and I guess we just don't want to let it die. So we're going to try to do every Tuesday. 4 days a month, and we have a different kind of little theme, do the work or workplace now. We're going to try to present some cadence that people can follow instead of sort of what it's been for the last year or so, as I've tried to keep it alive, which is doing it when I felt like it and then dropping it when I didn't have time. So our thought is it still has a place. We like the live format. It's a bit different than what you guys are doing, or as I mentioned, Lori and Jennifer and a bunch of others that are doing things, and we just kind of like playing in that little space. It's fun for us, and so we want to keep trying to do that.
I'm excited for it, Michael. I have to say, because it was fun doing it. It's a very different experience, but I like that idea that it is unique anymore. I don't think anybody is doing it. I think it's excellent. I'm glad to see you giving it another go.
I think that, for me, it's kind of a passion thing, but really, I know we're going to do Question Connect in a minute, but somehow you guys started this podcast, the Social Hour, and it took me a while to realize it was there, because it's easy in today's work world. I think there's so much information being pushed at us. It's hard to parse out anything that's worth paying attention to. Anything we can do, I think, to kind of keep ourselves connected helps. And that's part of what I think that drive-through does for me, and hopefully for the people that listen to us still.
I love it. Well, since you brought it up, it is now time for everyone's favorite part of our show, the half-hour question connection. Woohoo! Do you remember how you first connected with us?
So I don't know if we may have exchanged in vague chat on Twitter, as individuals before this, but somehow in the last year plus, I became aware of this really odd timed Twitter chat called HR Social Hour that people were doing on Sunday night. And I was like, Sunday night is when The Walking Dead is on, and when Ray Donovan is on, and
60 Minutes apparently we have been told.
So I actually, and then I realized that it was a podcast, and I listened a few times, and then I started getting curious about who you guys were, because you were competitors, but you were also doing something a little bit unique. I think tying the Twitter chat and the time of the event, kind of brought back some memories of the Thursday night event. So that's how I first noticed you. And then I reached out and we talked, and you guys did my show, and so on and so on. That's how social media works, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Michael, talk a little bit about how networking's helped in your career and what's been really effective for you when it comes to networking.
You know what? This is like serious. I mean what I'm going to say seriously. I was a SHRM member for a long time, and I'd go to local SHRM chapters, or I'd go to SHRM National, and I'd carry my business cards, and I'd try never to eat alone, and I'd come back home with cards from people that I never talked to again. I did that for about 15 years. I never could figure out how to break the networking wall based on individual chit chat. I hate small talk. That might surprise you, but I'm not good at it. I hate doing it. I don't really like wasting the time. And social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, later on Facebook, allowed me to meet people like Lori Rudiman, Werent Hogan, Steve Brown, lots of other folks that we know very well today. But I met them virtually, and it was so much easier to connect when I networked with them in person, and it was so much more effective. And it literally changed my professional life and my career. I would not have been a speaker. I would not have been a blogger. I would not have been a podcaster had that not become available as a tool and a resource.
Amen. Tell us who you read and follow for HR insights.
Tons of people. My focus is very broad and very shallow. I try to follow, the trends of labor and employee relations for Q and educate my members. So I focus on that, but I also try to stay aware of, higher level trends in HR. And so, all of our blogging friends, SHRM, I belong to a lot of other organizations, HRPA and others. It's really the social media universe that I follow, and the people who post online, and it's a multitude of people, that share information in so many great ways. And sometimes when something's hot, I follow one individual more than another. But some of the folks, I mentioned them already, Lori Rudiman, Jennifer McClure, Brian Wempen, William Tinka. I could go on and on. They're all great resources, and they're all great at keeping me connected. And I use that whole network.
Michael, how do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
I think I do it through sharing information, the podcasting, the writing that I do, which is much more limited today. But I don't try to be a thought leader anymore. I don't know that I ever did aspire to that, but I do try to be a useful source of information. And I certainly try to network people together and opportunities.
I think that's cool, helping people get together. That's awesome. So what is your favorite movie?
Whichever one I last saw. I actually thought about it. I go to the movies probably every weekend. I try to go see a matinee.
Nice.
Last thing I saw that I really liked that took me by surprise was Bad Night at the El Royale. Certainly Avengers. John knows we've talked a little bit about this. I'm a comic book nerd. So, Infinity Wars was surprising, but Deadpool, Logan, the Wolverine book, some of those are more obscure movies, are ones that I enjoy as well.
How about your favorite musician or band?
Recently, I've been listening to a lot of older stuff. I've been watching, not so much even listening, but watching performances. And I was a child of the 70s, and so been amazed at watching some original black and white Led Zeppelin performances. What a great vocalist Robert Plant was. Always a huge David Bowie fan, and have been kind of listening to his, since he passed away a year or so ago. Been listening to him a lot, but I'm all over on. I use Spotify and I listen to that throughout the day. So I love listening to a lot of different stuff. But those are some going back to my roots things, I guess.
It's interesting how online music and like Spotify and Pandora have changed how people are listening to music. I know it's changed how I listen for sure. Favorite TV show?
Again, I just cut the cord. I don't have cable anymore. So everything is streaming. I think the thing I liked the most recently sticks with that comic book thing, and that was Daredevil. I thought season 3 was really good. I just started season 1 of Ozark, and that's pretty strange and crazy. And those are the kind of TV shows I like. So I'm kind of looking forward to binging that. But I'm only in in the 3rd show of season 1 right now. So there's a couple that I'm watching right now.
Cool.
We've talked comic books already, and I remember the thing I remember most about you was when you asked me about being killed in Batman.
Right.
And it was
right.
So because I know it is delightfully random, and it is one of my weird claims to fame, if you call it that. But I have to say, I have not finished Daredevil yet. I've started season 3. Honestly, I'm more excited about Punisher season 2, but hey, that's how it goes. But when you're not going to the movies and seeing everything new, or listening to the Zeppelin and Bowie, or watching some of these streaming shows, what else do you like to do outside of work?
This year has been a weird year. I know a lot of people who seem to be saying, I'll be glad when 2018 is in the rearview mirror. And I honestly sort of feel that way. I had a few personal issues, family issues, brother sick, passed away, and some other things. I don't mean to be morbid, but it kind of makes it hard to focus on, the things you like to do outside of work. So just in the last month or so, I've been kind of come back to life a little bit, to the person I used to be, because I've been really heads down for work and for family issues for the last 8 months or so. I've, had dinner with Paul Hebert last Saturday night, and I had dinner with Carol McDaniel, who works for Delta Airlines, but is one of the first HR professionals I met in Florida when I moved down there in 2003 on Tuesday night. And I had breakfast here in Atlanta with a woman named Sherry Nato, who is connected to Frank Zupan. And I'm trying, I'm reconnecting not only in the social spaces, I've also been discussing politics, which is a bad idea, but I decided to do it this last weekend. But I've been trying to kind of revive some of my, like my personal life. So right now I'm just really focusing on kind of trying to get back to normal. If that makes sense. It's not like I was, I don't know. I wasn't living in a hermitage somewhere in the Himalayas, but it's been hard to do fun stuff. So I'm kind of trying to get back to that, and that's been fun. I'm also going to travel here soon. I'm going to Boston. I was up in New York State last month and visited some friends. So it's stuff like that really that I've been focused on recently.
Well, very sorry to hear about your brother, and
thanks.
Glad you're. Yeah. Well, and it's you have a new normal in your life, and so it sounds like you're starting to find that. So
right.
I'm glad that you are finding that new normal for your life. So finally, Michael, if you weren't in the HR profession, what do you think you'd be doing professionally?
I saw that question and I went, I don't know, because I did this for 32 years, right? I wanted to be a lawyer, but actually what I did when I worked my way through college and even in high school, and I still like to do it a lot now, especially for bigger groups, is cook. So I may very well have been, I don't want to say a chef, but I may very well have been involved in the restaurant business or some aspect of food preparation, because it was something that I learned to do young, and a lot of the skill set, like I could still flip eggs in a pan like I did when I was a cook, 17 years old, and it's a skill that stays with you for life, like riding a bike.
Yeah.
So something there, and and I guess if you were talking about kind of like fantasy life, I'd be a highly paid travel blogger. Probably talking from somewhere high atop the Alps or something right now. Anyway, I don't know. It's just something different, But yeah. I really enjoy HR, and I'm really glad I made a career out of it. Actually.
Good.
Well, we're glad you did too,
yes.
Michael, because if you didn't, we probably wouldn't be talking. And I appreciate especially the conversation about the labor piece, because it is a world that so many of our listeners aren't as familiar with. And so I'm really glad that we were able to have that conversation. I want to congratulate you because you survived the question connection, the conversation at large. We can't thank you enough. Again, I'm excited to see where drive-through is going now. And for those folks, though, that are listening that aren't familiar with you, that aren't connected, this is your chance to tell them what's the best way to reach you out there.
Search Michael VanDerVort on Google, and I'm almost impossible not to find. There are a couple of others. I'm not the guy at the University of Texas, and I'm not the guy that keeps getting arrested in Omaha. There's a younger Michael VanDerVort. No, I'm on Twitter as @Mike VanDerVort. I'm on Instagram as Michael VanDerVort. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as Michael VanDerVort. And if you just go to michaelvandervort.com, you can find my blog. So all those places. But it's surprising how many Michael VanDerVorts there are that I wouldn't want to be.
We will put that in the show notes, not just say Google Michael VanDerVort to see what pops up. But Wendy, how about you? For those listeners that aren't following you, how do they get in touch?
Well, best way is on my blog, mydailyjourney.com. Daily is D as in dog, AILEY. And of course, the fourth Sunday of each month, you will find me in an odd little Twitter chat, to quote Michael. But we meet 7 p.m. Eastern time on Twitter. Hope that we'll see you there. How about you, John?
Hey, John, before you go, I need to modify. Yes. It's not an odd little Twitter chat. It was just, I didn't mean, that sounds more demeaning when you hear it. It was a uniquely placed and interestingly timed night that I would not expect to have seen a Twitter chat. Because like I said, that's people do other stuff on Sunday night. That's and yet you guys took it and grew it and made it something that it really seems to be thriving. And that was what caught my attention. I was like, man, how did they do that? So it was intended to be complimentary if it didn't sound that way.
No,
I understand.
I completely understand. I want to kind of embrace it because it's different and it's not what you would expect.
If you're trying to find me, very simple. If you go to hrsocialhourpodcast.podbean.com, you'll find connections to all my social links there. And while you're there, if there's an episode you haven't listened to yet, you can download it directly. Listen, rate and review, share with a friend. It's the best way to help us continue to build the network. So again, Michael, appreciate you being with us tonight.
Yes.
So for the HR Social Hour Half Hour podcast, I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. And as always, be sure to connect,
give back, and
network.
Take care, everyone.
We'll see you soon.